Can I get a what? Welcome back to Shane Plays Tomb of Annihilation. Notes, welcome to a new year. And yes, the videos are still coming. One of those common comments and questions I get on feedback is, will there be more? And yes, there will be more. In fact, I have an announcement to make momentarily. But anyway, for those of you that are coming along for the first time on this journey with us, it's a series of videos on my notes and thoughts on running Tomb of Annihilation, the 5e adventure that's sort of a continuation, a big time expansion or continuation of Tomb of Horrors. It's now in Forgotten Realms. That started in Greyhawk. It's also just my thoughts as a DM, GM, rules clarifications, that sort of thing. It's not an actual play. It's just my thoughts and tips and explanation of how I run the campaign with my group in the hopes that it helps you. And based on the feedback I get, it does help a lot of people. So those of you for the first time watching, thank you. And for those of you that are always along for the ride, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So, quick announcement. I think this will make some people happy. I hope so. As I've said many times, I like making these videos. The feedback is always good. People always ask for more, talk about how helpful they are. The thing is, they take a long time to make, relatively compared to other stuff I do. I also work full-time, and then I do my other Shane Plays radio show podcast and all that, blog stuff. And then I also got to work and take care of my family. So it's not that I don't want to make the videos. It's just that sometimes it's hard for me to get to do it. Now, what I've done, because people have asked in the past, do you have a Patreon? And I've never had a Patreon specifically for the videos, but I've created one. So I've had a Patreon in the past is for my radio show and podcast. And I said, look, if you want to support my efforts, that's the best way. But it was never a direct fit to these videos. And I've actually had at least one person, if not more, support that Patreon for a while because they wanted to support my videos. Well, now I have a Patreon just for the videos. And I have some goals on there. The more monthly I raise, the more videos, D&D, RPG, and occasional just board game like Battletech or whatever, Car Wars, but mainly D&D and RPG videos, the more I will commit to making. And I think right now it's like at $25 or $30 a month. Then, in fact, hold on, I'll just pull up the webpage and we'll look at it. Okay, let me put on my +3 glasses of viewer feedback and or rules clarification and or web page browsing, and we'll take a look at what there is to see here. So let's open up the Patreon page, and I'll put the link in the video notes, but it's Shane Plays RPG and Tabletop Game Videos. That's the name of it. And the URL is like patreon.com/D&D_RPG_tabletop_game_videos. Because I'm trying to work the SEO, the SEM, whatever, all that stuff. But basically, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tiers of support, from $1 a month to $5 a month to $10 a month to $25 a month, with different benefits in there. I'm really not trying to create. What I'm trying to do is give people an avenue to support the videos and get it to a certain monthly goal to keep the videos coming. That's the main thing. That's the main benefit of this Patreon. I'm not looking to get rich off of it, but I'm looking to bring in enough income off of it to justify me taking the time to do it and putting the other stuff that I do on hold. Because I do like to make the videos. Let me stress that. And if together we can make it work, then we will. But I'll still, no matter what, even if this Patreon doesn't take off, I'll still, make videos when I can get to them. So, fair enough. All right. So, and then the goals are $25 a month. I'll do at $25 a month. Now, I may do more, but I will commit to doing at least one D&D or RPG video per month. And that's what I was trying to do with the Tomb of Annihilation, I was hoping to do at least one a month and cover multiple sessions per video instead of just one session per video. And today's is the 6th, and it's, how long have I been doing it? It hasn't been once a month, even though I've tried. And then $75 a month, I'll do at least 2 D&D or RPG videos per month. That doesn't mean on some months I may do more, but I'm saying I commit to doing that as a minimum, no matter what. At $125 per month, I'll do at least 3 D&D or RPG videos per month. At $150 a month, I'll do at least 3 D&D or RPG videos per month, plus a live stream. I'll do a live stream where we can interact and do whatever. I'd like to maybe make those Q&A, like, let's look into the rules of different games and figure them out. Like, I'll take live questions, but we can let it be whatever it's going to be. And then at $250 a month, I will do at least 4 D&D or RPG videos per month, plus a live stream. So if, I get all kinds of feedback. I've had people ask, do I have a Patreon that can support? I've had people say, hey, when are you going to make more videos? Can you make the videos more often? I love your videos. The videos are helpful. I get that all the time, and I love that. That's why I've kept making them when I can. But if you want to work together on this, then I will commit to putting them out even more often. So there you go. And I'll probably throw in a goal in there if we hit a certain point where I will start running like a Fantasy Grounds or a Roll20 RPG campaign for Patreon supporters, patrons. So there you go. That's the big news. There is a Patreon now, so let's see if we can make 2020 a new leaf for these videos and make them happen. So more steadily, that is. So hope that makes some folks happy. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Get on over there and support it if you want. I'd really appreciate it. But it's honest. I know it sounds always like, hey, give me money, but really it's for the people out there who's like, I really love these. I want you to make more of them. It's a way for us to work together on it. So anyway, there we go. Okay, so let's get to and what I do is I do viewer feedback and rules clarification, and then after that I'll get into the recap of multiple sessions. Today we're going to be talking about Camp Righteous as part of the Tomb of Annihilation adventure / campaign. So viewer feedback, rules clarification, then we'll get into that. Because what I try to do is do the rules clarifications up front, so that when we get into the actual recap of what happened, it can be a little bit smoother, and I'm not like, okay, well, let's stop and go look at Magic Missile or whatever. So, all right. So here's the viewer feedback. Callum Isles said, really enjoyed the series so far. Can't wait for the next video since I'm going to be running Tomb shortly after Christmas. Well, hopefully I'll get on enough of a track here to help you keep going after Christmas. Now that we're first week of the new year, something like that. It's January 6th, yeah. Are there any parts of the book you're removing or editing based on it being out of place or too ridiculous? Thanks for the pointers on the campaign so far. So I'm not editing or removing stuff because it's too ridiculous, because I don't mind ridiculous D&D. D&D should be at times bonkers and ridiculous. Everything doesn't have to make sense. Everything doesn't have to have a logical reason. As long as the players are having fun and we're moving forward in some kind of goal, even if it's just a dungeon crawl where we're clearing out whatever, I don't care. So, but I am purposefully not going the map for Chult and the Tomb of Annihilation book has, it's got a whole lot of encounters and areas on Chult you can go to. And I'm not trying to push the party gently or on rails or whatever you want to call it to go to everything. And I'm also not trying to, have them, there's certain key stuff that they really need to go to, right? I think Camp Vengeance, Camp Righteous, Curse of All, there's some other areas, and I'm not naming everything, I'm just throwing some stuff. Omu, of course, things. There's some places they really, Camp Vengeance, they really need to go, because they weave well into the narrative, the adventure. There's other places that are really interesting, but they just don't add anything. So if the characters happen to stumble across them, sure, but I'm not trying to get them there. And then there's other areas I'm probably just pulling out. Like I'm just there, and that's there's no set rule on when or how I do that. I just kind of gauge what, you know, how far into the adventure we are, how much longer do I want to go, and does this make sense given that there's a timer built in. You know, the soulmonger has a built-in timer, and their employer is like losing a hit point a day maximum and eventually going to die. So, you know, in a couple of players, especially one of my players, but more than one, but one player, it keeps coming up in their thinking. They're like, you know, how much longer can our employer survive, you know, while we're out doing this? Which is a good logical question. So when they wrote this adventure, they're like, you've got a timer. Your employer's going to die, and the soulmonger is going to do this, and da-da-da. But at the same time, look at all this interesting stuff. So run all over Cholt. So it's like, really? So you got to kind of find a balance there. So that being said, they may stumble onto an area where by the map or by the book there would be something there, and I may just not mention anything because I just don't think it will add tremendously to the story versus the timer. You know, so that's my best I can answer on that. Now, what I am going to do, because we're already by the book, like if I went through the travel log and figured out how many days they've been adventuring versus the employer's lifespan, there's a good chance they've already exceeded that. So she's got a friend in Port Nyanzaru who is like the I forget what they call them. They're not trade lords, but they're like princes of the city, and it's based on merchants. You know, the most important merchants become leaders of the city, kind of thing. And her friend is magical, the magical guy. So he's going to have used a relic or some kind of very powerful artifact to put her into stasis, and that may violate the actual by the book nature of the death curse. But, you know, he's using super, super, super powerful magic to keep her alive, and it won't go indefinitely. So more than likely, when they show back up, assuming that they successfully complete the adventure and like, we're here, you know, she's going to be in stasis, like with just like hours to live or something. That's probably how I'm going to do it. And stuff like that is a reminder why, while a campaign is going on, no matter how far back it is, you know, this video, if this is covering stuff we did 6 months ago, it doesn't matter. That's why I don't like my players to watch these videos while the campaign is active, because of stuff like that. And they'll be like, well, that just already done. I'm like, well, you never know what I'm going to talk about. So I can't stop you, but, you know, as an adult, I hope that you're showing restraint, which means if you're hearing me say this, please show more restraint. So there we go. Okay, so Callum, thanks for writing, and that's for my that's my advice there, or how I'm doing it. And then he said thanks for the pointers on the campaign so far. Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, Jay Reynolds, we got 3 or 4 of these saying when's the next episode. Jay Reynolds said, when is the next episode? Thanks for doing this series. It helps me out running my Tomb of Annihilation game on Fantasy Grounds. I just got Fantasy Grounds, like it Steam's into winter sale, Christmas sale, end of year sale, whatever you want to call it. So I'm hoping to play around with it some more. Let's see. And then Brandon Renault said, party is just getting into session 2 of Tomb of Annihilation, and just like yours, they found out about the dino races quickly after finding a guide. Your last video helped a lot on how I'm going to run it. Wish me luck. Luck! That was 3 weeks ago, Brandon, so I'm guessing you've already done it, but luck, good luck. Dino races can be a lot of fun if you prep it right. Ethan Denson said, I hope more are coming. These are super useful. Thank you for making them. Ethan, you're welcome. More are coming. Here comes one right now. Duncan Oulette. I hope I'm saying that right. If not, please correct me so I'll know how to say your last name, Duncan. Any chance this series will be finished? I really appreciate the first 5 videos. Why, yes, there's a great chance. It will be finished no matter what. But again, with the Patreon, it will, you know, how swiftly I can move forward, we'll see. And then Table 1 SG said, love this series, looking forward to more. I just started running TOA. My party loves it, and your videos made that happen. Thank you for the guide. You are welcome. And I saw another comment. It might have been another video. It was a previous video, but somebody said, thank you for the dino races help, because it was confusing to them. So I've gotten, some feedback like that. That's why I think I made basically one video was basically the dino races, explaining how the dino races worked, because it's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of kind of new or instant rules just for that scenario or that thing and all of that. So the dino races can be a challenge, but once you get a handle on it, they're a lot of fun, and they were definitely one of the more fun parts for my players. So, all right, let's take a look here. Rules clarifications. Here we go. So at the end of last episode, they were still coming down the river. They had, when they made their venture into Chult after their initial adventures in Port Nyanzaru, they got a couple of canoes. Off they went, and they had some encounters, and we did some travel. Then they made it to Camp Righteous, and that's kind of where the last video ended. So Camp Righteous, which I'll go over here in a moment. There's a few. It's a really, you can skip it entirely. But it's a fun encounter, and I recommend doing it. If you can. So, but on to the rules here. I temporarily distracted myself. Rules clarifications. So there's a mini dungeon, and it will go into, it's just almost like a straight line of 5 or 6 encounters and traps. It's all traps and puzzles, basically, and then as part of that, there's a glyph of warding, and the question came up, can the glyph of warding be disarmed? And in general, yes. I mean, you can disarm a glyph of warding a couple different ways. One is by moving the object that it's on. That will disarm it. I think by at least 10 feet or something like that. The other one is figuring out a way to trigger it without suffering the effects yourself. And then, of course, dispel magic. If it's dispel magic, if it's a 3rd level thing or lower, I think it automatically dispels. And then 4th level and higher, it's based on your potency of your level, or what, there's a DC and this and that and the other. But for this trap, or for this glyph of warding, I said no, because I want to make things more interesting. And there's also this little mini dungeon has a weird mechanic where you're supposed to be carrying somebody on your shoulders, and if you're carrying somebody on your shoulders, it makes all kinds of things different and better for you. So anyway, just to make things interesting, because the whole point of this dungeon is to challenge your problem solving and teamwork and intellect, then I said no. But a glyph of warding can be disarmed in a couple of different ways. So this was really interesting, this question. Can you use Entangle on the ceiling? Okay, so there's an area in this mini dungeon where if certain things happen, like bricks and debris start falling from the ceiling, and you're underground, so there's earth and stuff up there. And they say, can we use Entangle on the ceiling when these bricks and stuff start falling to slow down or hinder the bricks? And this is the kind of question that players will ask. That's a perfectly logical question. But DM's like, oh, really? I got to deal with this. and you're like, they're trying to use a spell sort of in a creative way, but it's way outside the scope of what the spell's written for. The spell is written for, it's almost like web or something, where you cast the spell, and then all these roots and vine come up and they hold people or make it difficult terrain. But the point is, hey, there's all these roots and everything suddenly popping out. If it was coming from the ceiling, would that slow these bricks down? So and a lot of times the way I rule on this stuff on the spot may be different than the way I would rule later if I had time to think about it. But the way I ruled is I said, yeah, I would allow that on the ceiling. And then I had to think really quick. And then I said, well, after you threw Entangle that next round, the amount of bricks falling would actually be worse because you've got new stuff pushing out and making more bricks fall. But then after that, it would make it better. And I didn't determine, I didn't get into the math of how much worse or how much better it would make it. But after I kind of threw that out, the player said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But that was my ruling on that. It's like, yeah, if you want to use the logic of Entangle to say, can we slow down bricks, then I'm going to use the logic of Entangle saying all this stuff is suddenly popping out and making things worse for a moment. So, that was that. And then a couple more rules things. There are these goblins in Chult called Batari goblins, and they're basically little jungle pygmy goblin tribal things. They wear masks and all of that stuff. They're like tribal goblins living in the jungle. And it kind of was like, well, do these things speak goblin? Or some kind of Batari language, and I went and looked in the rules at the beginning of the book. It goes over the Batari goblins, and I didn't see anything in there that indicated they spoke non-goblin, spoke something else. So I just said they spoke goblin. If you can speak goblin, you can understand them, but it's accented goblin, right? It's got a way different flavor and accent to it. So. Also in Volos, and this has come up in this campaign a few times because we have a lizard folk character. Lizard folk in Volos, Guide to Monsters, have a cunning artisan ability where they can make shields and other things from monster corpses during short and long rests. So that's something, it's kind of a cool ability. I'm sure it can be abused, but the player that we have in our campaign doing it, or playing a lizard folk isn't abusing it. It's coming up on occasion. They just successfully fought a dragon, which is way ahead. We'll get there. And that was like going to the mall. They got all kinds of stuff off that dragon. But anyway, they during these few sessions at Camp Righteous, that Throden was able to make a bone shield. The lizard folk character was able to make a bone shield for another character. So there you go. And then finally, keep in mind that the webs from the web spell are flammable. So if you cast web and then get stuff webbed up and then light those webs on fire, you can do some fire damage to them. Of course, it gets rid of the webs, but keep that in mind. I don't remember the exact numbers there. We can look it up real quick here. Let's see. Conjure. I love web. Web is such. As a player, I love web. As a DM, it annoys me because if you have a player that spams it in every encounter, it can get annoying. But it's a cool spell. So you conjure a mass of thick, sticky webbing. Webs are flammable. Any 5-foot cube of web exposed to fire burns away in one round, dealing 2d4 fire damage to any creature that starts its turn in the fire. So it's a pretty nice combo there. Should your players want to take advantage of it. So there's the rules clarifications and viewer feedback and all of that stuff. We'll get into the main recap. Before I get into the main recap, I just wanted to put a couple of pictures up. We had this wonderful random. There's a ton. One of the fun parts about Tomb of Annihilation is all the wonderful random encounters. And I'm going to take off my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback and/or rules clarification and/or Patreon browsing. And but one of the wonderful things about Tomb of Annihilation is all of the random encounters as they're traveling. It's what's called a hex crawl. Much of the campaign or the adventure is you're hex crawling, which is another way of saying a wilderness event. So instead of a dungeon crawl, you're above ground or whatever, hex crawling. I guess you could be hex crawling in the Underdark. But anyway, it's the wilderness adventure, and you have a chance for random encounters, and you have all these random encounters. And Tomb of Annihilation has an entire appendix for random encounters based on where you're at and all this wonderful stuff, type of terrain, and it's very varied. Some of them are just fun, some of them are deadly, most of them are just kind of challenging, but they're not level controlled. So one of the dangerous things about Tomb of Annihilation is that you could run into something super dangerous at any moment. There's no, well, you're a 4th level party, so you're only going to run into, I mean, it's not, Chult can be dangerous. But having said all that, we had this wonderful encounter with a bunch of skeletons, and I rolled I can't even, I'd have to count it up off the pictures, but I rolled a bunch of skeletons, and one of my players, who always brings minis, was just giddy because they were able to bust out all of these skeletons and put them on the map, and we had a lot of fun with that encounter. They were making short work of the skeletons, and then this gets annoying. So when you turn in 5e I guess up until you get to higher levels, turning just scares stuff and makes it run off. So you got all these skeletons you're fighting, and you turn them, and half of them run off. They come back within like a minute or something. So then you finish the fight, and, if they don't clear out immediately, then all of these skeletons come back. So, which can be annoying if you're just trying to wrap up for the night or whatever, which we were in this case. Half the skeletons ran off, and half of them stuck around and got defeated easily. But I think what I told the party was, or the group, players, I said, look, I'll just give you half XP for all of them. If you just, I'll just say you guys, knew they were coming back, and then you braced and set traps and just took them out. Or if you want to fight it to the, the nasty end, then, you get full experience for the skeletons. And I'm pretty sure they're like, we want to fight them all. I'm like, okay, so I did that. But yeah, that's one thing I've noticed with turning. I feel like I haven't run into this with other editions, but even at higher, as the clerics get higher levels, all it does is just make the undead run off or be frightened. And I'd like to get into earlier where they're just especially skeletons or minor, they just destroy them or defeat them or whatever. This running off and then coming back thing is kind of annoying for a DM to deal with. So anyway, all right, here we go with the actual recap of all of the sessions. It was probably 2 or 3 sessions that we were at Camp Righteous. All right, let's take a look at the book. Camp Righteous starts on page 43. That's where the flavor text or whatever starts. So it says, you come upon an abandoned riverside camp strewn with wreckage. The tents are moldy and tattered, and all the permanent structures appear to have burned to the ground. 2 intact rowboats are tied off to a short dock. North of the camp is a ridge, built into which is an 80-foot tall stone statue carved to look like a man with a crocodile on his back. Between the statue's feet is a stone archway leading to a dark tunnel. To the left of the statue is a crude animal pen with a small panicked bird running around inside it. There are no other signs of life. So what this is, the Order of the Gauntlet, who is still operating on Chult, it now has a camp called Camp Vengeance because of what happened at Camp Righteous. They found this existing area, and they saw the the statue of the crocodile, and I'll put a picture of it up. It's kind of understanding you have this area right off the shore going back to a ridge, and then the ridge goes up, and then built into the ridge is the statue of like a man sitting with a crocodile on his back, and his legs are hanging down the ridge, and in between the legs is an archway going into like a dark tunnel, and that's where that little short dungeon is, the one that's like traps and puzzles. Now that the fact that the guy has a crocodile on his back is a huge clue. A huge clue about how to get past a lot of the traps and puzzles. There's also a little story that anybody in Chult can relate to the characters. So if they have a guide, they could relate this. So if they have a guide or somebody else with them that is a native Chultan, then they could relate this story that's on page 45 under the heading House of the Man and Crocodile. And really the whole point of it is to make the point that in this trap/puzzle dungeon, which at the end of it, if they're successful, they can get an alchemy jug, the infamous or famous, however you want to look at it, jar of mayonnaise, the infinite mayonnaise thing. An alchemy jug can make liquids of various types in basically unending amounts, including mayonnaise. So there you go. Oh, I had to put my glasses on for a second. I had to stop the video, put my glasses on, and so suddenly you saw glasses appear on me. So I'll take them back off. Okay, video time is not real time. There's the profound statement for today. So anyway, so you have this weird thing built into a cliff. This crocodile and man statue. And then you have the remains of the camp, which has been abandoned, which is a lot of tents, and there's a couple of command tents. There's a burnout shrine. There is a couple of latrines, and then there's that little pen, that animal pen, where they see the bird, and that's a little axe beak, little baby axe beak. And our party let it go. And also, I think the druid used, like, speak with animals or talk to it. And it was, like, thankful, but also trying to be tough. Like, mess with me and my daddy will come get you and things like that. So it was kind of a fun little encounter. Since the animal pen is mentioned specifically in the flavor text introducing Camp Righteous, let's look at that real quick. It says the Templars, the Knights of the Order of the Gauntlet, kept swine in this pen for food. They're long gone, but a fledgling axe beak with 6 hit points and no effective attacks, basically 0 XP, has gotten itself trapped inside the enclosure. If the characters leave it alone or set it loose, it causes no problems. If the attacker harasses it, it squawks. Its squawks attract 5 adult axe beaks, which crash out of the jungle 2 rounds later, ready to fight whatever they meet. So what they did is they actually let the axe beak out, and then they closed the pen up so that other animals couldn't get trapped in there. That was sort of how they approached that. And axe beaks are... And it's like a bird with a beak, kind of like an axe, and they're not super deadly. But if you got enough of them together, and they were getting good rolls, then they could cause a party a little bit of problem. But they're not super huge. So let's talk a little bit about Camp Vengeance or Camp Righteous again. The actual history of it, backstory. When the Order of the Gauntlet first brought its war against undead to Chult, remember Chult is just brimming with undead for various reasons. Its members established this base camp around an ancient Chultan shrine, which local guides call the House of the Crocodile. The shrine wasn't the focus of the Order's activity, but it was, of course, an object of intense curiosity. Despite being in ruins, the shrine's traps were still active, and they overcame the Order's attempts to reach the heart of the shrine. The overconfident visitors neglected to build defenses around the camp, believing that their own strong arms were sufficient protection. A couple of months ago, they were proved tragically wrong when hundreds of undead swarmed out of the jungle and overran the camp. Only a handful of warriors escaped from that slaughter. No bodies remain in the camp, the remains of everyone who died defending it having either been buried by the second wave of Templars, now at Camp Vengeance, or dragged away by jungle scavengers. When the characters arrive, the camp is being watched by a party of Batiri goblins consisting of 2 goblins per player character. Leading the group is a goblin boss named Yaka. Not Chaka, Yaka. The goblins wear a wooden mask and hide in the foliage north of the camp. They believe the shrine is cursed, so they avoid it. However, Yaka had a vision of a great treasure inside the shrine that can make him a great figure in his tribe, so he and his followers have spent the last 10 days trying to work up the courage to tackle the shrine's traps. The arrival of adventurers is a great boon from Yaka's point of view. If they defeat the shrine's traps, he can simply take its treasure from them as they emerge. If they don't, they might at least weaken the shrine's defenses. Yaka's band bedevils the party without revealing its presence until the final moment. For example, if no guard is left to watch over the party's boats, the goblins steal them or knock holes in their bottoms. If all the party members enter the shrine, the goblins set up an ambush outside. If all else fails, the goblins use horns and animal calls to draw the attention of nearby undead. 1d8 zombies and 1d8 skeletons, or aggressive beasts, a hungry allosaurus, and 1d4 plus 1 axe beaks. So, there you go. Now, what I would recommend is there's several, like there's command tents, and there's like the latrine has a skeleton in it from, an Order of the Gauntlet member who ended up becoming afraid, and he went and hid in the latrine and died, and they can get a little bit of treasure there. At the burned out shrine, they can get a silver holy symbol of Torm. Most of this stuff is just, there's nothing there, and as they pick around, like in the command tents or whatever, they might find like a poisonous snake or something like that. But other than that, there's not a lot going on with the actual camp, unless you want to add stuff. Of course, you have the goblins bedeviling the party. So, but other than that, the camp itself, is not that fascinating. But this little house of man and crocodile is very curious indeed, and it would be the rare party that would pass it by, I think, without trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, it's like moths to a flame. They're going to see that, and there's no way they're not going to mess with it, unless there's just something really weird going on. So let's talk about the House of the Man and Crocodile. Again, there's this, carved in the stony hillside. Its entrance lies between the feet of an 80-foot high stone statue depicting a man carrying a crocodile on his back. And the statue is drawn in the book on page 44 is setting down carrying the crocodile. But there's this, any Chilton, this page 45, there's this, it's in a flavor text box. You can tell them the story. And it should be a big hint about how to approach the traps and the puzzles. So and the book even says tells a hint that can get characters safely past the traps in the shrine. So let's look at this because this is the main part of this area. None of the traps in the shrine will be triggered by two characters who are imitating man and crocodile, with one riding on the other's shoulders. Those characters can still be injured by a trap that's triggered by someone else, they just won't trigger it themselves. Navigating the shrine is difficult, however, for a two-person piggyback team. There's a recurring danger that they'll lose their balance, the rider will fall off. Any moment when they're not carrying or riding one another, they risk setting off traps like anyone else. If the rider is at least one size category smaller than the carrier makes requisite strength and dexterity checks and saving throws with advantage. Okay, there's a couple areas in here where there's a 7-foot ledge, and you need to read how that works, because they could fall while they're trying to climb up it. And then it talks about, unless indicated otherwise, a trap can be spotted with a successful DC 13 Wisdom Perception check. And I like what it says here, because it bothers me when parties of players will be like say you got 5 players in a group, and the person says, I'm trying to search for traps. And you're like, okay, the roll or whatever, you say, we don't find any. And then the next 4 players are like, well, I search. And it's just, like, by the game engine, it should be okay. But narratively, or for the tension or the challenge of the story, if you just keep hammering at something, brute forcing it, you're going to get past it. And where's the interest or fun in that? So I usually limit how many people can do the same thing. I'll let, like, at most a couple of players give it a shot. And then if they don't, succeed or whatever, then they just don't succeed. Now, for fun, like if they're trying to open a door, nobody can open the door, I'll let everybody give it a shot, because sometimes you get a funny moment where, like, the big burly fighter can't open it, but then, like, the little halfling wizard pops it open, and it's just funny, right? So I like what it says here. It's best if just one character makes this check, and only the first check counts, no matter how many times the search is attempted. If players insist on having everyone crowd in and search for traps, goblins might steal the party's canoes or rig traps of their own. So I like that. That's in line with how I think as a DM. Doesn't have to be in line with how you think as a DM, but it's in line with how I think as a DM. Okay, so there's a couple of traps in here that I'm not gonna. There's a concealed pit trap. There's a blade trap, and then there's a puzzle floor. And this puzzle floor is, it's confusing if you don't understand. It took me and the players, and I had to revise, like in the middle of the game, I had to revise it. Oh, no, guys, I'm sorry, I said it was like this, but it's really like this. So let me try to avoid some confusion for you. Okay. The area 6C and 6D, which is the puzzle area, the puzzle floor. I wrote way back. I was like, this is. I actually put the word. I said I have a critique. I'm going to critique this. 6C and 6D are confusing to explain or to draw or to map out for players. It really needs a handout, diagram, etc. to help with this part. So I was very frustrated, and sometimes modules will include isometric or 3D maps or something explaining stuff, and I think that would have been helpful here. Isometric is where you have that kind of top down, but it's kind of in an angle showing you dimensions and stuff, because it's just really confusing. You come to after you get past the blade trap, you come to a 7-foot ledge going up. Okay, and I drew it out, so I'm going to show that here in a second. But you come to a 7-foot ledge going up, and this is what I'm saying. Read the rules about the ledges, because trying to go over the ledges and all that. Then you have basically a 10-foot floor that's a 4x4 sequence of squares. So it's almost like a little game board. It's 4 squares by 4 squares all filled in. So you got 16 squares total over like 10 feet. Then on the other side of that, it goes up another 7-foot ledge. And then you just have a little bitty, like 2-foot or something area to stand on. And in front of that, there's a door. And at first I thought that it like went up, then over, and then down, and then there was the door, but it doesn't do that. So I drew this out. Hopefully it will make it more helpful. All right, let's take a look here. So let me get my bearings. There's that's a 4x4. That's what that floor looks like. Now, let's see if I can find something to point with. I guess this will help. So this is sort of an isometric view. I hope this helps. So the blade trap, you pass the blade trap, you come to a 7-foot ledge going up. Then there's that pattern. Then there's another 7-foot ledge going up. And there's just a short little place to stand, and there's a door there. And that little thing there is the pattern drawn on the door very terribly, because the pattern on the floor is repeated on the door. And then from a side view, it looks like this. So here's the blades. You go up 7 feet. There's the pattern on the floor. You go up another 7 feet, and then boom, there's the door, and that door has a little pattern on it again. So I hope that helps understand, because it was confusing to me, very confusing. And then this, let me explain, because this is probably the most difficult part. One, understanding how it's laid out visually in space, relational space, and then how the puzzle actually works. So, puzzle floor. To reach this section of hall, characters must climb a 7-foot high ledge. We just talked about that. The area north of the ledge forms a 16-foot high terrace. I don't understand the 16-foot high terrace unless, because you're going up 6, or you're going up 7. Does that mean you're already 6 feet up? I don't know. Ignore that part. It's confusing. You go up 7 feet, and then there's a floor laid out in front of you. It's tiled in a 4x4 pattern of squares. There's just enough room for a person to stand at the top of the ledge without stepping on the tiles. But beyond that, the pattern covers the floor from wall to wall, clear back to another 7-foot high ledge that separates this section of the hall from area 6D. 6D is the puzzle door. The wooden door at area 6D has a similar 4x4 pattern carved into it. A character atop someone else's shoulders can see the entire pattern on the door, not on the floor in front of you, on the door. But a person of normal height can't see the bottom row of the pattern on the door. You can see the whole floor in front of you, but then when you're looking up, there's that next ledge and the door on top of it. From the perspective, if you're not on somebody's shoulders, you can't see the bottom row on that pattern, on the door. Okay? It's confusing, I understand. And that's unfortunate because one square of the bottom, and it actually says, and that's unfortunate in the book, because one square of the bottom row on the door glows faintly. It says roll a 1D or a D4 to determine which square it is, so it's always different. Even if someone can see that area of the door, the glow is so faint that a successful DC 13 wisdom perception check is needed to notice. I chucked that part out because this is already hard enough. Especially if you're not riding on somebody's shoulders, which my group did not. Even after they figured out that would help, they obstinately didn't. So the pattern on the door corresponds to the pattern on the floor, with the bottom door row matching the floor row closest to the character. So you climb up on the thing, and that the floor is laid out in front of you, row of squares, and the row closest to the characters when they climb up on the ledge corresponds to the row that's on the bottom of the door. And on the bottom of the door, one of those squares is glowing, which is a huge hint where you're supposed to step on the first row in front of you on the floor. All right? The pattern on the door corresponds to the pattern on the floor, but the bottom door row matching to the floor row closest to the characters. If an individual applies more than a few pounds of pressure to any square except the one corresponding to the lit up square on the door, magical flames blast out from the walls. Every creature on the terrace, that's the area where the puzzle floor is, when the flames appear, must make a DC 13 dexterity saving throw, taking 4d10 average 22 fire damage on a save throw, or half as much damage on a success one. If the correct tile is stepped on or depressed, no flames are triggered, and a square in the second row on the door lights up. So if you step on the right square or press the right square on the row in front of you on the terrace, on that puzzle floor, then on the second row on the door, another little block will light up, and that shows you where you're supposed to step on the floor, and so on until you get across. And this says again very faintly. I don't do the faint thing on the door because, like I said, this is confusing enough. As characters advance across the floor tiles, the ledge blocks more and more of the pattern on the door, always making it hard for characters to see which square is lit unless they are riding on the shoulders of a companion. The tiled pattern on the floor can be crossed safely by stepping only on the squares that light up on the door, or by a two-person rider-carrier team. Okay, so if you're carrying somebody on your shoulders, you're fine. But if you're not, then you got to follow this whole sequence. Putting pressure on any other square triggers the flames. This trigger and trap are magical, so they can't be disarmed or jammed mechanically. Casting Dispel Magic on the floor tiles disables the trap for 1 hour. Okay, so you get across. Now here's the puzzle door. So you get across the puzzle floor. You go up another 7-foot ledge, and there's just a little area to stand in front of this door. To reach this door, characters must climb another 7-foot high ledge, above which the ceiling is 9 foot high. A wooden door at the back of the ledge, it's just right there, it's a very narrow ledge, has no apparent handle or latch. To open it, the 4 lit up squares must be touched in order from bottom to top by a rider carrier team emulating man and crocodile. So you got to touch them in order, like from bottom to top. Like this one lit up, then that one lit up, then that one lit up, then that. So you got to touch them. Even though they're already lit up, you got to touch them in the correct sequence. And you have to be a rider carrier team. Somebody has to be on somebody else's shoulders to even do the touching. The bottom 2 squares must be touched by the carrier and the top 2 by the rider. If the squares are pressed correctly, this door swings open to area 6E, which is the treasury. If wrong squares are pressed, the squares are pressed in the wrong order, or they're pressed by the wrong people, a glyph of warding on the door, this is the glyph of warding I talked about earlier in the video that I said for this purposes can't be dispelled, triggers a Thunderwave spell. Finding the glyph requires a thorough search of the door and a successful DC 13 intelligence investigation check. Every creature on the ledge, this is the ledge in front of the door, not the ledge with the pattern floor, puzzle floor. When the spell triggers, must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw on a failed save. The creature takes 2d8, average 9 thunder damage, is pushed 10 feet away from the door, and falls into area 6C. Setting off the trap there. So then you fall down there, and then here come the flames. Creature that succeeds on the saves takes half damages and not pushed. So there's nothing in here about how hard this door is to hack through, but I guess make up your own rules. If they just can't figure it out, if they can't get the puzzle figured out, and they just have to blast their way through the door, of course eventually they can do that. So, and then beyond that is the treasure room, the treasury. It says the floor of this dusty 40-foot high, 20-foot wide chamber is littered with dinosaur bones. Webs stretch from the walls to a 30-foot tall central pillar, and then coiled around that central pillar is a narrow staircase, so it's spiraling around it. Steps covered with dust. Carved into the pillar are reliefs of a man carrying a crocodile. Once again, put somebody on your shoulders. It's just over and over. It's making those hints. The reliefs follow the stairs to the top of the pillar, on which sits a large, beautiful ceramic jug. And the ceramic jug is an alchemy jug. So, this was the room where they triggered the collapse, and they were like, hey, can we use Entangle to slow things down? So let me tell you a little bit about this room. The staircase that spirals around the pillar is 2 feet wide, and each step is 1 foot higher than the one below it. Whenever a character who is carrying another character starts his or her turn on the staircase, both the rider and the character must make a DC 10 dexterity acrobatics check. If both checks fail, the rider and character fall, otherwise the team maintains its balance. There are 30 steps in total. So, and it's an interesting room, but you just have to keep up with it. Steps 3, 10, 17, and 23 each have a glyph of warding spell, so set to trigger when the step is walked on. Creatures emulating man and crocodile don't trigger the glyphs. If you do trigger a glyph, it releases a 20-foot radius sphere of lightning centered on the step. Every creature in the area must make a DC 13 dexterity saving throw, taking 5d8 or average 22 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Creatures emulating man and crocodile have disadvantage on the saving throw. So even though you don't set it off because you're man and crocodile, if somebody else is around you and they set it off, and you get caught in it, if you're doing the right thing by being in man and crocodile, then then you have disadvantage on this dexterity saving throw. To spot a glyph, the dust on the step must be cleared away, and a character searching the trip must succeed on a DC 13 intelligence investigation check. Okay, and then finally, at the top of the pillar, the jug is an alchemy jug placed here ages ago by Choltons who revered it as a gift from Ubteo. The only safe way to pick up the alchemy jug is to emulate man and crocodile. Either member of a rider-carrier team can pick up the jug safely and carry it out of the room. If this jug is picked up by anyone else, if you're not in the man and crocodile team, loose bricks begin to fall from the ceiling. Every creature in Area 6E is struck by falling bricks and must make a DC 13 dexterity save, taking 3d6, average of 10 bludgeoning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. A creature that starts his turn in the room repeats the saving throw. After 3 rounds, the bricks stop falling. A rider carrier team trying to descend the stairs while carrying the alchemy jug makes dexterity acrobatics checks with disadvantage unless the jug is placed in a backpack or slung in a sack or some other hands-free carrier. So there you go. And my party of players accomplished this dungeon, this puzzle dungeon, trap dungeon, in 2 game days. So they explored Camp Vengeance or Camp Righteous and all that. They made an initial foray in, was getting slapped around and beat up by traps. So they backed out, did a long rest, went back in, I think on their second venture in. And there was more than one time somebody had to go back out and come back in because they brute forced it. They didn't use carry somebody on my shoulders even after, and I don't understand this thinking. I really don't. I mean, I'm going to let the players be the players, however they're going to do, but when it becomes obvious that in order to successfully navigate this whole thing with a minimum of danger, that somebody should be riding on somebody else's shoulders, they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. I'm like, okay, but I mean, they really got slapped around pretty hard. So I just don't get that line of thinking, but that's their choice. I'm not going to tell them they can't do it. My philosophy is do what you want, but there can and will be consequences. So, and then every now and then, I try not to do this, but just every now and then I'll step out from behind the screen, if you will, and put my DM hat off, and be just a person and say, why are you doing that? This is weird, and it's impacting my enjoyment of things as the DM, So that's just odd. Why would you do that? And then not when they're just trying, but when they're doing stuff stupid like, well, let's just treat this like a trip to Six Flags and see what happens. I'm like, okay, okay. When they just completely stop role playing as their characters and they start being the players using their characters to trigger stuff to see what happens or put other people in danger while they're I just don't understand that. But I understand there's different styles of play, but that is never the tone that I set for my campaigns. It's fun, but it's also serious. All right, so I will back up, and then I'll tell you, now that we've kind of gone through the puzzles and the traps, read some of the other traps. I went through the more confusing stuff, but now I'll kind of give some information on how my party handled everything. Again, they took the door of the pen. They took the door off the pen to prevent other animals from getting trapped in it. Their guide, offered to tell them the story of the man and crocodile. So they had that as a hint. And the other thing that was confusing to me, it never really says if the entrance to Area 6 is open or closed. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. This came up. So let's go to Area 6. Yeah, it never says that whether those doors at the... It looks to me like there's no closed door. It's just open. And so the players were like, well, aren't there leaves and dirt and stuff in here? And I'm like, no. So it's just, but it looks like there's not actual doors. You just go through the archway between the feet. So if you want to add cobwebs and dirt and littered leaves and maybe little creatures, that's fine. I thought it would be weird for little creatures to be running around in here, because then that logically, why wouldn't some of the traps have been set off? But anyway, okay, you don't have to think that hard about it. So, but if you want to have a door there, I think at first I said there was a door, so I just left it that there was like a door that they pushed open to get in there, and then I just left that's how it was, because they're actually the second night that they stayed, they all got right inside, like between the entrance and 6A, which is a pit trap that they had already triggered, and that's where they did their long rest. They closed the door and long rested inside, because I had told them there was a door. So there you go. When the party didn't catch the clue of the man carrying the crocodile, the first foray into the dungeon, the Undril Silvertusk, there was a player playing her as an NPC, said, I'm going to sit on the porch of the entrance and I'm going to meditate and keep watch, and kind of keep a watch out over the whole camp, which was pretty smart because, there was the goblins out there. But she said she was meditating on the porch, and so I secretly gave her a 25% chance for her to kind of have an epiphany, inspiration. I think this was because they went in and kind of got beat back, and the second day they were in there and she was out watching, because she started yelling, she started laughing once it occurred to her what the man and crocodile and all that was, and I rolled a 3 on a 25% chance. So she started laughing and shouting and stuff about strong shoulders and all of this stuff, and trying to give them more hints about it, put somebody on her shoulders. And at one point, later in it, I can't remember exactly when, but they figured, we need to have people on our shoulders. And I think it's when they were figuring out the puzzle floor stuff, because they figured out that if somebody was a certain height, they could see across and all this. But they just blew that off. So I've already gone over that. One of the nights there that they were there, the goblin harassers sunk one of their canoes. And then at that time they had the gladiator with them, and he realized something was going on, and he ran over there and couldn't tell exactly what happened, but kept the second canoe from being sunk. And then, of course, they have the 2 rowboats that were already there when they arrived. And I gave another hint, because Undril Silvertusk is sort of a military type character, and I gave her a hint that. I said, you just feel like something is not quite right. You don't know what. And that's her military or whatever senses picking up that we're being watched, and that was the goblins. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why that she was on the porch kind of keeping an eye out while they were in there trying to figure out the traps. So for 6A, they asked if there was a mechanism to reset the trap door, because it kind of falls in. They didn't find one. There wasn't one mentioned in the book, so I didn't. I said that they didn't find one. And when they got to the puzzle floor, and there was they were setting off flames, and it was a comedy of errors. But they ended up somebody went back outside and found a branch that was kind of a hooked branch, and they used that to start banging on the tiles. Like putting pressure and setting off the flames after they got roasted a couple of times, and they were able to kind of figure out through trial and error which of the first row, which tile was the one they were supposed to step on. So they weren't somebody on somebody's shoulder, and they weren't staring at the door and seeing the lit up thing. They were kind of trial and erroring how it went. All right. So and then their second foray in, once they or it might have been 3. Anyway, after they figured out the puzzle floor, they made yet another attempt, and everybody went that time, and the gladiator and their guide kept watch, and everybody went in. And then, so they went through everything, got beat up, much worse than they had to, but they did finally figure it out, brute forced it. The rogue, as far as I'm concerned, intentionally grabbed the jug to see what would happen and was cackling like a maniac when the bricks were falling. That rogue has now perished later in the adventure. No shocker there. And at the end of that session, they came out with the jug. They're all beat up and bedraggled, but they got the jug, and the jug didn't get smashed. And to the sounds of horns blasting, and what that was the horn. It talks in here about the goblin leader Yaka can blow a horn and summon stuff. So we ended the session there to horns blasting, and they came out, and I had the goblin horns brought. An Allosaurus and 2 axe beaks, and then of course there's 2 goblins per player character. So and then during the fight, because the players are like kind of spread out, some players are up on the porch on the shrine, other players are down. They're fighting goblins, they're fighting axe beaks, they're fighting an Allosaurus. Well, through stealth, they had an initiative count, they had stealth rolls, and they were able to sneak in while the fight was going on and grab the jug, and they were running off with it while everybody's attention was on the fight. And then finally, through passive perception or something, one of the party members noticed that there was a goblin about to jump off the porch with the jug, and they were able to kill that goblin, and the boss Yaka and another goblin ran off. And then we did this thing. I wasn't going to let it get smashed, I don't think, but I did. Well, because the goblin was about to jump off the shrine, and they killed the goblin. Goblin's dead. He drops the alchemy jug. The alchemy jug drops a few feet, hits the ground, and was like, "Oh no!" So I rolled some damage, and I think we rolled like 1 point of damage on the jug. So I said like a little chip came off of it or something. I don't think I was going to let the jug get smashed after all of that, but I know I was trying to have that tension there. And then they took both rowboats and 1 canoe, so they showed up with 2 canoes. They found 2 rowboats. 1 canoe got sank, and they took the remaining canoe and 2 rowboats when they left. They had a tropical storm that delayed them one day. Don't forget to... you can have storms, and you can have all kinds of stuff that come up, like the nature of being in the jungle that can add to the drama or the adventure. It's not always just monsters coming out of the forest or the jungle, right? They had a lizard folk encounter, which was fun, and then they had that really fun skeleton encounter we already talked about. And the lizard folk encounter was fun because they were like... there's a lizard folk in the party. So they're like, how did you take all of these, hair skins or whatever as your slaves? And there was a lot of discussion there. They were very impressed with Throden, the lizard folk party member, because he had all of these humans and stuff, non-lizards working for him. And, so that was a fun encounter. And then one other thing I want to mention, I should have mentioned this towards the beginning of the video, but we had a new player work in, and what we had done was, for a couple of sessions, I said, listen, you play Undril Silvertusk as an NPC, because they said, I want to check out and see if I like 5e, and if I think I'm a good, if I can play it well, and kind of get a feel for the group. And they had been watching these videos, but also happened to be somebody that was in my game store, and so they were curious. I don't think they had watched this actual series, but they had watched some previous ones. And I said, sure. Yeah, I said, why don't you play Undril Silvertusk for 2 or 3 sessions, get a feel for it. And then the player was like, well, they just ended up statting up. They took, Undril as like a 2nd or 3rd level character and made a cleric out of her, and said, well, I just want to play Undril. And that wasn't a problem. It creates some interesting role-playing at Camp Vengeance, because Undril is supposed to be reporting for duty, but now here suddenly Undril is becoming an adventurer, and still going to be going to Camp Vengeance, so that's going to be interesting. I didn't have a problem with that at all. I will say, if you're a player watching this, the player in question, who's a great player, and a friend. So I'm not trying to diss on this person. I'm just saying in general. The other thing about that kind of caught me off guard was that they announced to me that was going to what was going to happen, and they had already made the character sheet and everything. Again, it wasn't a problem, but I think it's better to ask the GM or the DM first, like, hey, can we do this? Because there might be a reason why that's not going to work. So, you know, and my first thought was like, well, it's going to make Camp Vengeance kind of interesting, but then we had some fun role-playing that, so it led to some good role-playing. My thing is, I never try to just say outright no. But I might say yes with qualifications, or I might say, well, here's the deal, and kind of try to explain it. And then every now and then I'll say, I'm sorry, we can't do that, and here's why. Or if I can't explain well, I'll say, you just have to trust me, but that's not a good idea. But anyway, yeah, so Undril, who was an NPC they were supposed to be escorting to Camp Vengeance, is now a member of the party, and that's worked out really well and really fun. So that's it for this video. I guess it's a long one. I don't know. But I hope you enjoyed it. Please, support that Patreon if you're interested in, getting more of these videos on a more regular basis. Regardless, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.
Nice.
Okay, let's check out adolescence.
3 years.
Me too. Every day after school.